pan pizza is one of the easiest pizzas you can make at home. It also happens to be one of the most delicious. In this video, I'm going to show you how to make amazing same-day pan pizza without any fancy cooking equipment. The end result? Mouth-watering crispy cheese crust, perfectly cooked toppings, a golden undercarriage, and soft, pillowy dough. It's pure decadence and some of the best comfort food you'll ever make. So let's get to making some fantastic pizza. Hey guys, here we are 6 hours earlier, and I've got everything that we need behind us here to make some phenomenal dough at home. All you need is some bread flour, some olive oil, some table salt, yeast, and sugar. Once you start making dough at home, you don't go back to the store-bought stuff. Let's get into this. The first step is adding some water. For 2 pan pizza dough balls, we're going to be going for 1 cup of water. Now it's time to add our yeast to the bowl of water. As we're going to be doing a 6-hour dough, we're using a half teaspoon of yeast, of active dry yeast. So we're going to throw that in. If you don't have 6 hours to make your dough, that's fine. In the description of this video, I've included some other yeast ratios depending on how long you have. So we're going to mix the yeast with the water here, add just a tiny sprinkle of sugar in this phase, just making sure that the yeast is alive. The fact that there's already bubbles forming here is a really good sign that we indeed have active dry yeast and not dead dry yeast. It's time to add our flour. I use bread flour. We're going to be going for 2 1/4 cups of flour. Now the amount of flour that you add will vary a little bit based on how fine the flour is. If you want to be precise and you have a kitchen scale, the weight of the flour that I'm adding here is 356 grams. So we're going to be adding a few more things here. First is some extra virgin olive oil, 3/4 of a tablespoon. Doesn't have to be ultra precise. Some sugar, 1 teaspoon, food for the yeast. We're going to hold short of adding our table salt at the moment, as yeast really is not a huge fan of salt. Start mixing everything together. Go around the edge of the bowl and then pat the middle of your forming dough ball here. If your dough is super flaky, that might mean that you haven't added enough water. When it's starting to form into a blob, it's time to take it out of the bowl. We're gonna start kneading the dough ball with our hand. We use the palm of our hand, just press down and away from us, rotating the dough ball as you do it as well. If your hands are feeling a little sticky at this point and you're getting a little bit of dough stuck to them, that's a great sign. That means that you've added enough water. It's been a few minutes. We can add our salt. 1 teaspoon of salt, more or less 1 teaspoon. And I'm just folding the salt in and kneading away. The more you knead, the more you form the gluten network and the better the dough becomes. I usually knead for about 10 minutes. When your dough is starting to resemble something closer to Play-Doh and it's looking less like ice cream, that's when you know that you're closer to done. I think we're in a pretty good spot here to start to fold this into a ball. You take your dough blob and you fold it in half. So you kind of just expand it like that. And the bottom of the dough ball is just kind of folding in half. Keep working around the dough ball, folding it, and then you can plop it on the counter. This is where you kind of add height to the dough ball, pinching the bottom, rotating, pinching the bottom again. Rotate with your hands until you get something that looks like this. All we got to do is put this back in the same bowl that it started in, add a dash of olive oil. Instead of lifting it straight up, you can just unscrew it off the counter like this. Just make sure that it's nice and coated with all of the olive oil. All we got to do now is cover our bowl up. You just want to make sure that it's airtight. Wait for our dough ball to double in size. Usually happens within 1 to 2.5 hours. 2 hours later and our dough ball has doubled in size. Here it is. Look at that. It's very smooth. Rotate the bowl and get your hand under it and it should come out very easily. And it's incredibly pillowy right now. We're dividing this into 2, kind of make a line down the middle. To get these into beautiful dough balls, we're going to use a very similar strategy as we did before. We're going to fold it in half. Once you've done a few folds of your dough, you can plop it on the counter, make a little wedge, and rotate your hands. And there we have it, beautiful dough ball. One thing that you can do to help your dough balls rise is close off the bottom. It's almost like a dumpling. Just kind of pinch it. 1,000 feet of saran wrap. small part of me has wanted to just unravel the whole thing and walk down the street and see how far I go. So we'll leave these alone on the countertop and come back in a couple of hours. Before we start prepping our pizza, we're going to turn our oven on to 450 degrees Fahrenheit. Here are our dough balls 3 hours later, doubled in size pretty much, just like the big original dough ball did. Before we take these out of their respective bowls, we're going to do some food prep. We're going to be making our own tomato sauce, really easy to make. All you need is tomatoes, a sprinkle of onion powder. I get a little bit more generous with the garlic, the oregano, salt, and pepper. I'm going to be doing this by hand. When you break a tomato up, do it kind of underneath the water or sauce. After about a minute or so of crunching, you should have some nice chunky tomato sauce. When it comes to cheese, I keep it fairly simple. We've got some mozzarella and some Parmesan, and I grate it up. And I am terrible at grating cheese and not grating my hands as well. There is some war wounds that are going on here, all patched up. When it comes to toppings, we're keeping it fairly simple. Some basil for garnish that will go on at the end, and some cup and char pepperoni. We are moving on over to the stove. What we're gonna do is cook the bottom of the pizza to get it nice and crispy on the undercarriage, and then finish in the oven for a few minutes. I'm gonna generously coat the pan with some oil. Just make sure that it's nice and evenly coated, especially along the sides. You can be generous here. Adding the oil makes it nice and crispy. Time to take our dough balls out. Come up from underneath. What we're doing here is just getting our dough ball to fill out the entire bottom of this pan. Make sure that any air bubbles that are hanging around are popped. You're just minimizing the risk of a big bulge forming in the center of your pizza. Okie dokes. I've set the stove here to medium high. As this is starting to cook, I'm gonna take a big spoon and coat this pizza with my sauce. You can go heavy on the sauce because it's all gonna cook and bake in the oven. This is like a tavern style pizza, so our toppings go right up to the edge. Now that things are nice and covered, I'm going to start by adding some Parmesan cheese right up to the edge of the pan. This is going to be the game changer, getting that cheese to burn and become beautifully caramelized and crispy. Generously sprinkle mozzarella cheese on the top, cup and char pepperoni. It's been on the stove for about 4.5 minutes so far. I'm just looking for a light melt before I transfer to the oven. So that's happening here along the edge. So we're gonna launch this pizza into the oven. Make sure to use oven mitts for this because your cast iron is gonna be quite hot. As the pizza is cooking in the oven, chop up some basil. I just sprinkle this on top of the pizza when I'm finished. Let's check up on our pie here. It's coming along real nice. And you can actually see I did forget an air bubble, or I missed one. It's rising up there towards the far side, but it's not the end of the world. It will still taste fantastic. Let's check up again. Cheese is completely melted. We're seeing a little bit of browning up here. We're gonna crank it up to broil to finish off our pie. And this is probably only gonna take a minute or two. We're gonna keep a super close eye on how the pie does in this little broil stage. When you broil, things happen fast, so we're gonna take it out. Look at that sizzle. Oh yeah. Remember, do not touch the handle. Always use your gloves. That's coming from experience. As tempting as it is to just try to eat this right now, we're gonna have to let it sit for a little bit. You want to maybe wait for a couple minutes, and then we're gonna throw some garnish on here. The sizzling has subsided slightly, so we are going to throw our garnish on top. Now, to dislodge your beautiful creation, you're going to want to use a butter knife or a spatula, metal spatula, and just go along the edges. Take your time with this. You want to keep as much of the beautiful burnt cheese on your pie as possible. Here's our beautiful pie, transferred onto a cutting board. So there you have it, the pan pizza. One of mankind's greatest inventions. We've got a beautifully burnt crust, toppings that are cooked to perfection. I'm gonna try this out and see how the final product tastes. So here is a slice. We've got the burnt crust on the side. Now the bottom, very gold. Let's take a bite and see how it is.
This is incredible. It's so savory and decadent, and that burnt cheese crust. Oh man. A pan pizza. All we need is a pan and a bowl and an oven. Dead easy to make. It's really hard to beat. A pizza for the people. Chef's kiss. This is gonna be gone in the next couple minutes. If you like this recipe, please save the video, share it with your friends, subscribe to my channel if you want more pizza content, and happy pizza eating. Thanks for watching, friends. Take care and goodbye.